Next, we have what I think is going to be a super interesting panel that I tried to get onto, but I responded a little bit too late. But it's going to be about the importance of social dynamics in play and in game design. We have folks from all diverse set of viewpoints from all across the ecosystem, different points of the value chain. I'm really excited to hear what they have to say. So let's bring our panel on up for the next session. Playing together is more fun. Is social a must? Hint, the answer is yes. But they'll give you a little bit more color on that. Spoiler alert, sorry.
Good morning. Welcome to the 75th Annual Hunger Games. Just wondered if you were awake. Just thought I would check that. Hi, my name is Serena Robar. You are in the panel is social. Is it a must? Do we have to have it? We've got a great panel of guests today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. A little about me as I started my career over 20 years ago in community management. So I know the joys and the deep, deep pains of people. Just in general, people. I'm the CEO of my own company and co-founder of AuthorDigital. I also am an adjunct professor at DigiPen, so I deeply care about people, no matter how they're acting at the time. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce my lovely panel. James, would you like to start?
Certainly. My name is James Mayo. I'm a product development manager at a company called A-Circuit Studios. I'm actually the founder too. My background is in sort of two chunks. First chunk is in AAA, and I've been working in the game development industry for about 30 years or so. And then the other half of my career is in the kinds of companies that develop for AAA. So for the past decade or so, I've been working in the indie space, and so that's me.
Excellent.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Warner. I'm the Senior Vice President of our entertainment portfolio at Hippo. I've been in the games industry for about 24 years now. I started in AAA as well as with Microsoft and Disney, spent some time at EA and BioWare, making some interesting and fun big RPGs. And now I work for Hippo up in British Columbia, Canada, which is delightful. And I'm excited to talk about this topic and share some thoughts.
And hi, I'm Calum, Cleary. I'm Director of Product at Kanoapps. We're also from Victoria. We're from BC as well, out of Victoria. So, yeah, independent studio, and been operating for about 15 years now. And they have a mixture of games that have been going that were PvP, that have been going that were for like 15 years. Then we have a new portfolio of narrative idle games. So it's kind of a diverse player games and also players that play those games. And for Kano, part of our mission is meaningful connections through social games. So it is actually part of our DNA that we really focus our company around.
Excellent. You might have noticed we are missing a panelist today. Leanne, unfortunately, from Netflix could not make it up, and so we will channel her thoughts, and we'll just say what we think that she thinks, and then totally put us on the record for that, because that's what she gets for not showing up. Exactly. We'll just every interview she's ever done, and boom, it'll be perfect. It'll be just like she's here. So let's talk a little about social in general. When we think about games as a whole, I started in community management, and I launched the Pokemon trading card game online, which is predominantly for children. I was a community manager also on Marvel Super Hero Squad Online. All kids, all COPPA compliant, and the concerns are very different than maybe a AAA shooter and things like that. And so those are different things. And then we think about indie games, we think of mobile, and we think of, single player, but guilds, and all of a sudden it's a group dynamic that we didn't have before. And then there's also like the streamability, like if somebody's watching someone else play, that's also considered social as well. And so I think as a group, we sit here and we think, it can be very expensive to moderate a community. What is necessary and what isn't. And so I'm going to look to Calum a little on this and say, hey, you see things, you've been around. Talk to us a little about the pros and cons, I think, of social dynamics within games.
Yeah, so I think there's two things that are really key factors for games right now, and that's live ops and social. And, it's a really difficult time right now in the industry, so it really is so important to be able to retain players over a long period of time. So for social, the pros is that we've literally have people in our game that have played for 15 years. We've had people meet online. We've had Kano babies out there. Those games still generate huge profits for us and helps with new game development. The other pros of it is that you can start to build and monetize around those guild structures. So they work together, they play together, they want to help each other out. They will pay to move up leaderboards to monetize on that way. So it's really, the stickiness is a factor for social, and there's also another aspect where they will bring in other people to play with them, and that UA is very expensive and it's not getting cheaper, and for you to have people actively trying to bring people into your game and play with you is extremely beneficial. And I think now with streaming, like you were mentioning, or easy sharing with peers, it helps to people bring in. Con side, yes. So there is some added cost. Definitely we have a player success team that you have to know the game very well. They actually are in Victoria. They are full-time employees. We don't outsource it. We have a community manager. If you have chat in your game, please talk to me. You do have to sort of plan around things like that because it becomes toxic. And I've actually made quite a bit of changes when I came to Kano of how far we handled chat, because it can get to the point where people will leave the game if it's done poorly. But you do have to moderate some of that. And the other things that can be a bit tricky, to be honest, is things like A/B testing. If they're talking with each other and all of a sudden they see something different in the game, they might not like that, or they might follow up your success, and all of a sudden you get a bunch of support tickets, and you got to deal with that. So that can be tricky as well.
That's funny. I just imagine you're just trying to find out, like, should the title look different? And then you get all these support tickets. Like, why are you changing my game?
Can I riff on that a bit too?
No.
Okay, great.
Absolutely not. Of course. Exactly. Just be great.
So one of the other things that you were talking about, Calum, was cost, right? And that's one of the things we can make the assumption that probably, unless you're like totally in game development for creative expression, and even then you probably want an audience and that's some form of community, that the costs that come not just with managing a community, but if you don't manage it properly, especially if you are in the process or looking forward to working with a publisher, if the community is managed poorly, there can be an acidic effect, or even if you're not consistently keeping them updated, publishers will look at that and see that potentially as a sign of risk for them. What they're looking to use the community for is sort of validate your product in the market. So that's another thing to just be aware of.
Oh, that's a good point. So what I'm hearing you say is you have to be mindful and sort of like have a plan and a strategy for a community, because community will grow whether you have a plan for it or not, and the type of community that grows is very different. Like there's either beautiful flowers in your garden or there's nothing but choking weeds, and so you have to be deliberate because you have a garden, whether you want to take care of it or not. So you want to take care of it, and then it can also affect your relationship with publishers if it's an area that needs tending. But once a culture is ingrained, it is very hard to change it. Yes.
Yeah, just to add one more thing about that point is that we did pivot, to actually have an active strategy for Discord, and then started live streaming. And it's our player success and community managers that run that. And it's been so successful. I really thought it was a bit of a risk, but I thought, this is not that big of a risk, right? It's just time. And that it humanized our player success team and connected them with the players in a way that was just really beneficial for both sides. And it's really interesting to get that feedback live from the players as well. And I would definitely say engaging your communities or having a plan around your communities is definitely very important.
John, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know what? I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I think it is vital. We have a really good player experience team at Hyper Hippo, where when people come in with complaints or tickets, we're right on top of it. They turn it around really, really quickly, really well, and just people who come in with complaints and leave feeling cared for, and they become actually more of an evangelist. And I think that concept can be applied broadly to community management as well. I think that one of the things that is important here, though, is to really think broadly about multiplayer, about social. There's a traditional methods and means, whether it be leaderboards or guild activities, chat. I think that if we can think broadly about it and not be super pedantic, and think about just different ways that we can be social with each other. We recently did an experiment with TikTok on their minigame program. And really that was all about capturing somebody's attention in under 2 seconds. So when you're looking at a game, this looks fun to play. Creating something that is engaging to watch as well as engaging to play is really, or can be, super important to your social strategy, right? Because if it's fun to watch, then people are going to want to stream it. And talking to the audience of your audience is an important piece for us at Hippo, where really we're looking to give people a means to build a community, build their own audience using our games as their platform. That's another means of being social, and it's a way of circumventing. If you're really strapped for cash, you have a small scrappy team, that can be a way that you can get that social engagement without the gigantic costs that can come along with more traditional means.
Because that's true. I mean, games since the beginning of time are an excuse to be social. It's a reason for people to get together. That's why we have board game night and RPG night, and now you can play them all online together, and so you can still be online and someone can be further away and you can be playing with them. But it is an excuse to be social, but you don't have to have all the deep multiplayer mechanics in that to do. I love watching people play games. I don't have the hand-eye coordination that my children do, or my husband, and so what I'll do is I'll be on the co-pilot seat, right? And so they'll be playing, and then they won't see everything on the screen that they need to. I'm like, try over there, and then I grab my tablet and let me look up where this is and stuff. So it becomes this, would you call me a gamer? Well, I would. I mean, I might not be holding the controller, but I'm definitely a gamer. I'm engaged in what's happening. I'm being social. This is a part of what we're doing together, but I'm not what we used to call traditional, right? Like traditional's gone. Like we're all different types of gamers out there, and we all are social differently. So, we can't just assume we can tell someone how to have fun. This is the only way you can have fun. That's it. No, I'm sorry, you're not having fun, right? You can't play this. And that type of thing. But when we think I think about a single player sort of situation where if I'm doing a match 3 or a more casual or a hyper casual, and then the guild elements where, yes, it's still it's still a solitary experience I'm doing it on my own. But if I'm part of a guild, and I think of empires and puzzles, but you join a guild and you're like, okay, well, you have to go and do your event, which is a really big deal. And like, there are guilds all around, like you were to your event on time and you're out. Like they're very, very, I don't want to say, they're very competitive, right? I mean, that's the whole thing, if you're competitive or social. Let's talk a little about maybe those types of experiences, because I think that for indie developers, that maybe the idea of having a huge customer care sort of situation is a little out of the realm, right? A little hard, right? You don't have the money for that. What are different things that they could do for the social side of things to create some stickiness and what I always call the guilt mechanic? Like you talked your mom into playing something and you're in a guild together, but you're not maybe playing it as much, but you talked her into it. Oh my God, you're not going to not play that because she's going to get on you. That type of stickiness factor.
Positive social pressure.
Exactly. So positive.
Positive social pressure, right? You're with your friends, whether they're right next to you or whether they're across the world. Pardon me. My allergies are killing me. and that pressure to show up and do your part, right, is a powerful component to getting people to return to your game and keep playing and having fun with their friends, having that competition, and it becomes a really nice loop. The trick there is having a rich enough meta and enough material to really keep them coming back and back. So it's a bit of a content treadmill, but I think it can be super effective way to keep people engaged in the game and build organic installs. The holy grail.
Yeah, I would also add to that is if you have an incentive where if you invite a friend in and they reach a certain threshold, that you get a really good reward for bringing somebody in and getting to a certain, so not just anybody, but they actually have to progress in the game and hit it. It's quite a powerful incentive. It has worked on me, I fully admit it. I just looped in some people on Monopoly Go, and it can be pretty powerful. It's pretty easy to do.
Yeah, I think John touched on this too. There's something like, game development as theater as well. And so I think that's one of the things that, if you can't necessarily manage a large community, sometimes if your game shows really well, you can have other people's communities manage themselves as you do development. And so that is one element that we found has been very helpful. The other thing that we've done is open up our community to select builds of the game. And so that sort of status elevates them within the community, and then they can contribute feedback and direct the course of product development. And so that does take a little bit more management. You do have to kind of be careful with that approach, but it can yield a ton of benefits for you. So it is one of the things you have to weigh as a cost, though. Yeah.
So like inviting your players in. What I used to say when I ran communities is that I'd be like, you're welcome to my home, or welcome to Grandma's house. Now, she's a cool grandma. She was at Woodstock, but you still don't want to put your feet up on her chairs and be disrespectful that way. But she's going to let you, kind of have fun and be a little rowdy. But if you train your community and anyone who's playing that is the line, that's what you can do, then they train other people. I think it's really nice that people, if you walk into their grandmother's house, you're not going to be disrespectful because, your friend's going to be like, dude, not cool. Grandma's not down with this. And so that type of thing, that mentality, and then you become those advocates, right? We're going to go and we're going to bring other people in here because this is a cool, safe place that doesn't have a bunch of assholes in it. And so therefore, I want my friends or family and stuff to be involved with us that way. I see the thoughts nodding at me like I'm brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank
Tell
you.
us more.
Deep insights. I like it.
Actually, getting your community on your side and empowering them to be the agents who help keep everybody else, behaving nicely. That's a really nice trick. It's hard to do sometimes, but if you get that core group of players who just love your game and want to talk to other people about it, and then when people come in and are trolls, they tend to shout them down, and that's a nice thing.
Yeah, if they don't feel welcome, they're not going to stay, and this is both good actors and bad actors.
Right, and I think that it goes kind of back to the point of thinking about these things very broadly and not being too prescriptive, right? Everybody has different motivations for how they play, how they want to play with others. I play lots of games, so, all sorts of platforms. I very rarely am either vocal on the mic or, vocal in the chat, vocal. And that's cool. I still feel like I'm getting social engagement out of it because they give me lots of other ways where I can quietly brag. I can humble brag because I've got the awesome badge. I'm participating in my guild and I'm like number 2, number 1. And that makes me feel really good about myself. It's like, wow, I'm clever. I'm good. I'm participating. I'm helping out. I never pick up the mic. I never type. And that's okay. So allowing venues, allowing ways for people to be expressive and not necessarily have to funnel through, your brilliant game design, I think is super important. When I was at BioWare, we developed a lot of really intricate matchmaking systems, and which was super expensive, and sometimes it worked well and sometimes it didn't. And then games like Wordle stroll up up and they're like, hey, yeah, social, here's a button that you can press. And I was like, you guys, brilliant. It was brilliant. And then they were able to share on, the platform of their choice, right? So it doesn't always have to be a super intricate, well-designed, brilliant scheme. It can be the brilliance of a button, which I think is...
It doesn't have to be over-engineered. It could just be something, simple that really brings people together. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about, I'm going to throw the diversity thing out there, underrepresented groups that maybe get a little picked on, a little harassed. I mean, it might shock somebody, but I have played games in which I was not welcomed or treated a certain way. I know it's a shocker. We're all such lovely people in the world that we get along so great. But how do we create a world where maybe someone doesn't want everyone to know, oh, hey, I'm a chick in the games industry. I do remember for one company, I actually created an alias, and he was Dre Roberts, and Dre was awesome, and his avatar, looked different and stuff. And then I had an email with Dre Roberts, and I would do everything through Dre Roberts, who was a cool, badass dude. And Dre would always be like, I got to check with my boss on this one. I was the boss. He'd get, things from the community, and everybody loved Dre, right? And everybody was going to hate me regardless. Like there was no getting around if you are in a certain type of game and you've got a female community manager that's like taking all the fun out of stuff. So Dre would go to bat for me and be like, you know what? She's super cool. She's totally fine, but she just can't let this go by. So I'm just gonna give it to her because I think that. And then everyone was like, Dre, you're such a good guy, man. The way you look out for us and go to bat, with Serena is awesome. It was me. I was everybody on that, and so it was just one of those ways to kind of be like, how. And it was Dre Roberts, Princess Bride fans. And so that's something that I had to do, and this was years ago. I'm hoping that wouldn't be the case today. So how do we deal with that when you get such... Politically, we're so charged with one another right now, and we do see that spill over to the social side. So how is that dealt with, I guess, for you guys? What have you found works or doesn't work?
We did two things. The first thing that we did that we like you were saying, we could see that the culture was starting to take a turn that was like, oh, this is a bit challenging to contend with because people's feelings are getting hurt. And I'm a pretty big advocate for free speech, but within a community, these cultures can ossify, and then you're stuck with it, like you're saying. So one of the first things that we did is just ask people not to participate in political speech. And that was sort of the first thing that we did. And then the second thing that we really focus on is just the merits of the behavior that we want to reinforce, which is friendly behavior, good behavior. And I think, like you guys were saying, you begin to empower your community to sort of police and enforce the mores that you want to establish. So
having a clear guideline of this is acceptable and this isn't, your code of conduct. We think about PACs, and one of the first things is just don't be a dick, right? You're like, oh, everyone's definition of that is pretty clear, where it's like, oh, just, the golden rule, in other words. So by doing that, you enable your patrons and your customers to go back and say, hey, just check out the rules of conduct. You can shut it down fairly quickly. But how do we welcome people and say, this is a safe place? How do we let them know that this is a place where they can come and be themselves and hopefully, not get a lot of flack?
I think the first step is really knowing your audience, right? If you've got a fairly casual social game and people just want to show up and not in a non-threatening environment, there's not a lot of trash talking that goes on inside there, then make sure that that's what you're presenting outward, that your social opportunities are geared towards that kind of quiet participation and supportive. Hey, you're awesome, you did great, and don't create a venue for trash talking because that's not your audience. If you're creating something that is more competitive, more combative, and trash talking is kind of part of the fun, then it's really important to get yourself some good software that will help filter out a lot of the garbage talk. Get yourself a good moderation team that can help you kind of deal with the actors who make it through your chat filters and security systems. And then you can really start enforcing and creating an environment, fostering an environment where that social behavior is in the zone where you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the way that we had to handle it was that, so for the sort of the public chat, we limited what they could write on there as far as even how much they could post, and it was really to draw them to their own private chats where they moderate that and very explicit of what that group is, and then they can moderate it as a group, and they're actually fairly good when you moderate because then you can leave if you don't want to be there. And then I must say, like, Discord has been really great as far as, like, it's very clear that it's like a social channel and we're all there to just, you know, share experiences around the world or talk about the game in a different channel for strategy. You know, it's really great. You have these tools, and so you have now different places where different people can meet and talk. And I think that really helps with different groups' needs, hyper competitive versus social. And I think that was one of the great things that we saw during the pandemic was that people really, really relied on those social connections. It might have been the only connections they had while they were on lockdown was the people that they played with. And so it was good to have a vehicle for them to be able to communicate with them as well.
Excellent. We are a little less than 10 minutes into our talk. We can continue on, or we can answer questions early. I hate when I get to the end of something and then it's like, I have no time to answer questions, particularly as we get warmed up. I will look for the group and be like, what are we feeling? Are we thinking questions? Dave, what do you think? What's your gut tell you?
If you want to go to questions, I have a question. If you want to keep rolling, there's like 12 minutes on the clock. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, up here says 9 minutes. Oh, Dave's giving us stick down. I like it. Oh, thank you. 11. Okay, perfect. Gentlemen, do you want to go to questions, or if there's anything in particular you want to kind of point out that I might have missed? And I'll cry.
I would like to give you bonus points for your Princess Bride
Thank you.
reference. That was good. Questions. If you guys have questions, I would love for this to be a conversation.
Almost a social experience.
Oh.
What'd you do there? No. Questions?
I can jump in on one other thing too.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So we're in the triple I space. So we're actually developing fairly sophisticated or complex systems. And so
could you define what triple I is for those in the audience that might not understand that?
It's basically like AAA, which is like a high budget title in the, I guess, like you think Nintendo, Microsoft, these are sort of companies that develop AAA titles. We do AAA, which is independent, but budget of say 10 to 30 million. It's a little fuzzy, this being an indie, but it's sort of.
I like AAA. I hadn't heard it before. Like I would hear like AA or something like that, but I like AAA. I like AAA. I'm on board. It's official.
So the first mode of our game that we developed is a player versus player game, and it's when I'm talking about complexity, it's technically complex. So there's the AWS server, which handles our backend stuff. There's the game servers that make sure that there's no cheating, and then there's the client. We use the Unreal system, and our retention rate, we're still pre-alpha, but our retention rate was something like people coming in, it's about 10 minutes of gameplay. And that was pretty consistent with each milestone that we released. And then we switched over to player versus environment, or you could think of it like adversarial play. We switched to cooperative play. This is in the past 6 months, and it's a pretty significant feature set, but nowhere near as difficult to develop for as like the competitive adversarial play. And we've been noticing a 400% increase in retention times. So that's a pretty, illustrative example that you don't necessarily have to go hardcore complex, and you could focus on features that are more collaborative and cooperative. It is a route to take, or at least think about.
Nice. All right. Okay. Sorry. Hot flash. Sorry about that. It's just my world. All the old people were laughing like, my wife does that too. Okay. And then for the young people, your mom's doing that. Be nice to her. So let's talk a little questions. So Dave, you want to start it off? Ooh, a microphone too. And feel free to break out into karaoke if you need to. Like, we're down with that.
Just anecdotally, participating mostly as a community member on these, my general perception is as community size scales, toxicity tends to scale and non-linearly, like closer to exponentially, right? As you add zeros to the number of participants. And I'm wondering, have you seen that same phenomena? How do you do resource planning around that kind of community scaling relative to your expectations of toxicity?
I can add a bit to that. So it seems for us the magic number is 30. So we actually put for the guilds or that a max. We started at 20 and we went to 25, 30, and then beyond that it became bad. Yeah. And then for those private chats, we also had to put a limit on that. And we haven't really found the magic number, but we're kind of like 50 or less. So I would definitely say like, yeah, the bigger the room, or Discord, we haven't really had that issue yet as far as a whole bunch of people in there yet, but that's still a fairly new platform for us. New being like a year and whatever it's been. I don't have track of time anymore. Maybe it's longer than that. But yeah, that's it. So yes, that's a real problem. So just having a plan, I guess, to manage that it doesn't become just one giant room where just the loudest people take over is something you want to work around.
Toxicity. Yes, gentleman in the beautiful blue shirt, turquoise.
So with, thank you. I am an actor, so I didn't need it. But so when you're talking about implementing voice chat into a game as like an indie studio, obviously that's a new feature that takes a lot of development time. How much do you feel leaning on third parties like Discord for like your in-game gameplay voice chat is like? Would that be recommended? Would that be something where you say don't lean on a service like that? Just make sure you implement your own thing, because obviously if you have to do the voice chat and the text chat and everything in your game, that's just extra features that can take away from development time that could be spent on balancing and gameplay and stuff like that.
100% for us.
Off the shelf, baby. Don't make it yourself if you don't have to. Many years ago, when I worked at Microsoft at Zone.com, we did the whole experiment. And Zone.com, for those of you who are old might remember it, for those of you who are young, it was basically one of the first places you could go to play a bunch of different games at once. So you could play Age of Empires or you could play Bridge. So you had this very eclectic group of people, and it was surprising on a few different levels, because you would have your people who are hardcore Bridge or Spades players, and they also played Age of Empires. So, the day of analytics is kind of fun to be like, oh, this is a thing. But one of the things that would happen is we call it T to P. Has anyone ever heard that expression before? Time to penis? Yeah. So we were like the first to actually enable and say you should use a webcam while playing Bridge, which is a horrible idea, because the T to P is about 3 seconds. And so when you think about those types of things, do you want to be known for the service that actually says, yes, we've enabled this and we've spent a lot of resources to allow the TDP to happen? Or are you like, hey, use your own webcam on your own judgment, right? We're not going to advocate. It was a short-lived, group divider, like, oh, if you can see who you're playing with, that'll be amazing. These total strangers that just clicked, come into my room and play Bridge with me. And you're thinking a Bridge crowd? No one's dropping their trout. No, they are. And so it was one of those things where it was like universally known. Some people were just like, people are awful and the worst common denominator if something's going to happen like that. And then there were those beautiful optimistic flowers that were all like, oh, no, it'll be awesome. They'll be best friends and they'll come together. So I think that lasted, a week? And then we turned that feature off and said, you know what? We're going to let people do their own webcams if that's what they want to do, but we don't want that to be known in our service. So yeah, you get the best of people and you also get, the surprising other side of people. But don't pay for that. Don't enable that yourself and pay for that when you can be putting money and time into your game. Do off the shelf and let people do it, but Discord is good for that. 3 minutes. 3 minutes, people. Yes, over there. It's a magnificent beard. I like it.
Thank you very much. So, as a small team of developers with a low budget, how do you recommend getting something like moderators in a multiplayer game or for like chat? Obviously, we don't really have the budget to pay people to do something like that. So, do you just find evangelists within the community, or how exactly would you recommend a small, indie studio to do that?
Yeah, I crowdsource, yes. Lean on your friends, lean on your network of pals who can hop in there and do you a solid until you get things things rolling. I think that being scrappy and thinking about it in just ways that it's like, hey, little brother, you could you could do this for me, and that would be awesome. As a way to start, at least, right? And then finding those players in your community who are passionate, who love it, who love the game. Those are the people that you want to help get involved.
Yeah, one of the things that we tried was thinking about community like a game designer. And so if you think about progression, we categorized a number of roles for our community. So there's community members who like to break things. These are our test pilots. There's community members that like to stream. These are our creators. And then we've got community members who like to go into other communities. And these are ambassadors. And so categorized sort of the roles that we thought would be helpful for us. And then what we did is create a tier system so that you could actually progress through the tiers. So if you're a test pilot, you go to level 1, level 2, level 3, and as you went up the tier program, you actually are commandeering or empowering people to be moderators or other roles that have more responsibility, and they also get more authority. So those two things are combined.
And they get a badge that says they're a badass at wherever level they're at, so they can show off to everyone else. Nice. Was that helpful?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Over here. Last one. You're it. Make it good or get out.
Boy, but it'd be a good one. I kind of have a related question. Obviously, a chat room or anything of that nature is going to generate more data than your people can possibly moderate. Wondering if there's any thoughts on utilizing technology to actually, drill into that data for more than just moderation purposes, player sentiment, identifying influencers, and so forth.
Yeah, I'm a fan of big data and using machine learning and neural nets to help you parse it and figure out what's going on inside of there. Great idea. If you've got the resource to do it, do it. I think that it's a rich trove of data that's in there and player insights are gold. So I would say that, if you've got the resources, you've got the ability to deploy that sort of system, then I don't see the downside.
And a lot of times for independent game developers too, they don't have the resources to do that. So if that is a business idea that you have, you're like, hey, I'll take all your data and give you predictive things about things that can help with you. I think that's a great opportunity for anybody if you're looking for a side hustle, because I think there's a lot of people that would be interested in that, being able to take that and have insights into their community that just don't have the resources to do it themselves. Well, Dave is kicking us off. Dave, thank you all for coming and hearing our talk today. We are here. We are available. Call us on LinkedIn. Come up, talk to us. It's lunchtime. Not lunchtime. Someone else is coming up. Never mind. We'd love to talk to you at some time while we're here. But thank you all, and have a great conference.